The NASCAR schedule is filled with tons of different types of tracks, whether it's by size, layout, whatever it may be. But there was a big problem that NASCAR's schedule had for the longest time. There was too many cookie-cutter tracks. Too many tracks that didn't have enough variety, like short tracks or road courses, kind of looked the same, but took up a majority of the schedule and kind of made the NASCAR schedule very boring, and ultimately most of the races would just look the same. But you see, NASCAR seemed to have solved that problem until it seems like it didn't. But more on that right after this. NASCAR is back, and there's no way that you can miss any moment of all the returning series action. That's where HelloFresh jumps in. HelloFresh is an easy way to save money on your food costs without having to sacrifice time or taste. And with the ability to switch in or out other meals for proteins or sides, veggies, and more, you can fit it to your diet plans, especially with over 40 weekly recipes to choose from as well. My girlfriend and I, for instance, also use HelloFresh to cook together after long days of work, like with this pork sausage rigatoni rosa. It was really good and worth the time and effort we put into it. So, to get your order of HelloFresh today, head to HelloFresh.com and use code Iceberg65 for 65% off plus free shipping. That's HelloFresh.com. Code Iceberg65 for 65% off plus free shipping. Now, back to the show. And I think the first order of business we have is to define what a cookie-cutter track is. And there are a couple ways that people really look at this, but they ultimately revolve around the same kind of truth. And what a lot of people say cookie cutters are intermediates that are shaped the same and between 1.5 miles to 2 miles long, generally though looking at the 1.5 miles. So some examples, for instance, that people would look at would be Old Atlanta, or Kansas, Texas, Charlotte, Kentucky, Las Vegas, Chicagoland, and then a lot of others could add in Auto Club and Michigan, as they fit into the same range, and especially when cookie cutters were prevalent on NASCAR's schedule to an extreme extent, they were part of the problem and seen as part of that issue as well, and they just seem like amped up versions of tracks we've already seen. These tracks can bring in a lot of good racing and fans from different areas. But these tracks also at one point made up over 1/3 of the schedule, actually at one point almost half the schedule. While today Auto Club and Charlotte and Las Vegas and Chicagoland, Atlanta, they're all different in how many races they have or what type of track they are. At the time, they were all very similar. And at one time in the mid-2000s into the 2010s, half of the chase for the Sprint Cup's 10 races were cookie-cutter tracks. Whether you had Chicagoland in there, Texas was always in there, Kansas was always there, Charlotte, Auto Club, there were tons and tons of 1.5 miles. Tons and tons of sameness. And fans were not happy about this, as well as the fact that tracks like Auto Club, Chicagoland, Texas, and Kansas were built in what they saw as non-NASCAR cities and areas, definitely trying to cater to a more trendy fan base rather than the diehard fan base in the NASCAR-filled areas that had short tracks like a Rockingham or a North Wilkesboro. The racing as well was seen as relatively strung out and single file. There was not much contact as all of these tracks were very aero dependent, and with the Gen 4's end, the twisted sister they had was absolutely sensitive in the extreme extent to any type of damage, and the COT really wasn't much better when it came to aero problems. So naturally, fans for about 20 to 25 years wanted these tracks, if not gone, they wanted them at least limited a ton. And this is something that was on the top of many's list for a long time, and something that NASCAR even vowed to address. And in the 2020s, NASCAR did address it, and the fans got what they wanted. Listen to the list here of tracks that either were gone off of NASCAR's schedule, changed in some way, or are going to be gone off the schedule. Chicagoland Speedway now is currently off the schedule in place for a Chicago road course. Also, the Auto Club Speedway, going from a 2-mile track to a short track, will be off the schedule at the moment, and there is an indefinite amount of time that it will be because there is no real plan that has been approved. Texas Motor Speedway, down from 2 races a year to 1 400-mile race. So 1,000 miles at Texas has now been replaced with 400. Kentucky, off the schedule, a track that many had been talking a ton about as being a Southern jewel, that Bruton Smith even said would be bigger than the Daytona 500. That track was gone within about a decade of being put on the NASCAR Cup Series schedule. The traditional Charlotte race in the fall, that race is gone for the popular Roval race. Now the only race at Charlotte at the moment is the 600, as even the All-Star race has been moved from the cookie-cutter track to a short track in North Wilkesboro, and of course we have Texas in the middle and Bristol, but we kind of ignore those ones, just being honest. Michigan, down from 2 races to 1, and always sort of in question with whether or not it'll stay on the schedule by a lot of fans because it can't draw many people into the stands. Atlanta was 2 races a year, then went down to 1, back to 2 after the pandemic, but those 2 have now been turned into super speedway races. When you look at how many races there are of cookie cutters, it has went down. Yes, we've added a second Kansas race in the last 15 years. Yes, in the last 10 years, Las Vegas has gotten a playoff race, but that doesn't remove the fact that many of these cookie cutter tracks are really being reduced in how much they race on it, changed, or just completely taken off the schedule. And it seems like NASCAR fixed their problem. And on top of that, they've replaced them with road courses, which for the longest time people forget were the type of tracks that fans were asking more for. And there's short tracks coming. The Nashville Super Speedway, for instance, is in question long term, even though it's not necessarily a cookie cutter at 1 1/3 miles, because the Nashville Fairgrounds may be on the NASCAR schedule in the coming years. You have North Wilkesboro will be on the schedule, and while not a short track, Rockingham could be, and many are asking for Iowa. It seems like NASCAR has altogether gotten a ton of variety on the schedule, and in what NASCAR fans were asking through the 2010s, has made what the fans wanted a reality. But now, of course, as in everything with NASCAR fans, the goalposts have shifted. And I'll be honest with you, I don't think NASCAR is at fault for this, and I don't think the fans are either, because there's a couple things that have shifted these goals. Starting off is the Next Gen car. The Next Gen car was promised to be a complete redesign from the bottom up of the car, of racing, of teams, of everything, and it changed a lot. It was designed to be good at short tracks and road courses and ended up really struggling at them. The racing at road courses was very hit or miss in 2022, and we're going to find out really soon at COTA how good it is now. Short track racing was diminished a lot as there wasn't as much beating and banging, and Martinsville, especially the spring Martinsville race, was an absolute slugfest to go through as a fan because everybody just sort of stayed in the same place except for 1 or 2 cars. And what ended up being really damn good was the intermediate racing, the cookie cutter racing. Look at some of them that came into their own with this car. Kansas was awesome to watch. Las Vegas, awesome to watch. The 600, probably the best one we've seen in over a decade and a half. And that's just scratching the surface. These cookie cutter tracks like Auto Club in Michigan had the best races in 5 to 10 years. These tracks are coming into their own, whether on the schedule or not. Old Atlanta really would have come into its own overall with the Gen 6 or the Gen 7. The Chicagoland Speedway came into its own even with the bad 550 package and had 2 great finishes to end out its stint. Kansas, probably the best 1.5 miles on the schedule. And Auto Club we saw this weekend and also last year had aged into a fine wine. But NASCAR has shifted their goalposts, so once again, they're not on the same page as NASCAR fans. And to be fair, they're where NASCAR fans were for the longest time, but due to their own success with making the car good at intermediates, has shifted it once again so NASCAR fans don't agree. And I don't blame or even really get annoyed at either party. NASCAR did what was asked, fans liked it, and now fans really like it. And now you really have to ask, what can be done? Well, I think there's a couple things. One is they need to continue to improve the short track and road course programs for all of the new additions, whether it be the cars or the tracks themselves. They have really bought into the fact that they're going to be doing street courses and road courses. So it needs to be fixed that strategy is not the only way they can pass. That passing at these tracks is not so aero dependent that cars get dirty air in a slow hairpin. And we're going to, again, find out at COTA if this is fixed. I personally don't think you can tell from the Clash whether or not it's improved or not, because the Clash is its own animal. So we're going to find out at Richmond and Martinsville and ultimately North Wilkesboro how good the short track program is. It's said to have been improved but not perfected yet. So that's something that NASCAR needs to keep focusing on. Even though the intermediates are good, you need to lift the rest of the racing up with it. And then the mile and a halves. I think that with those, you need to promote the current cookie cutters for the great racing they have. Get NASCAR fans happy for those races, no matter where they're at. And just for my own sake, because I'm a fan of the track, add back Chicagoland Speedway as being an aged track like it has been, as well with the next gen car racing well at mile and a halves, will probably make for an all-time classic race. But with that, I'm going to pass it on to you. What do you think about NASCAR's cookie cutter conundrum? Do you think that they need to add some more back, keep as many as they have now, or just scrap them completely? Let me know down in the comments below. While you're at it, leave a like in this video, share this video, and subscribe to my channel for more great NASCAR content. Thank you so much to all my channel members for your continued support, and be sure to watch the NASCAR Weekly Podcast tomorrow night on my channel at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. We got a ton to talk about with Auto Club and leading you right in to the Las Vegas weekend. So until next time, have a good one.